You're listening to WPRS
on the Z-Talk Radio Network.
The next stop is the Warren Exchange Paranormal Radio Show on the Z-Talk Radio Network.
The views expressed and opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Z-Talk Radio, its affiliates, or sponsors.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Welcome to the Warren Exchange Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host tonight, Al Warren. Now, I want to introduce a man who comes to us with a unique healing and teaching talent, and an even more interesting journey. His name, Rocky Krogfoss. He's from Langley, British Columbia, Canada. Now, I first came across him with some of his YouTube videos. He does videos on stress, what is it, how do I deal with it, and he does distance healing. Very interesting. And now his recent book called Man, Sex, and Food is out. We're going to talk to him about his projects, his healing, and his book right after these words.
I'm really psyched Subway's bringing the flavor with this new guacamole for a couple of reasons. First, people really love our guacamole. Rich and creamy, made from Hass avocados and just a hint of jalapeno to keep it interesting. The other reason is, it's just really fun to say. Guacamole.
Guacamole.
Guacamole. Guacamole. Guacamole. Guacamole. See?
Come in and try our new guacamole on sandwiches like the Chipotle Chicken Melt and discover how it turns up the flavor on all your favorite sandwiches.
Subway. Eat fresh.
You can listen to us anytime, anywhere now. Download our free app now for the iPhone and iPad. Look for the Warren Exchange or House of Mystery app at the Apple App Store today.
Well, they're doing an awful lot with ESP these days.
What's that?
ESP? Extrasensitive perception.
Okay, and we're back. We have Rocky Krogfoss, and thank you for joining us, taking the time.
You're very welcome. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Let's start out with you. Let's tell the people that don't know who you are a little bit about your story.
Sure. Well, primarily I had a spiritual awakening, I guess you could call it. It certainly didn't feel like it at the time, about 22 years ago. And before that, I was more of a product of a very violent and abusive mentally and physically childhood. And I was generating life experiences based on that experience way too much in my life. And when I had my emotional breakdown, there was a time when I stood over a black vortex. I actually saw it and felt it, and I felt what I thought was the winds of hell going through my body. So I've been in a very, very dark place, and I've understood why some people choose to leave this planet. But I come from a warrior soul kind of background, and I looked at this black vortex, even though it was the easy way out. I looked at it and I just gave it the middle finger and I walked away. A few weeks later, after trying to work with a doctor to try and figure out what was wrong with me, quote unquote wrong with me, I realized that the medical system didn't have any answers for this whatsoever. And I sat on the edge of my bed one night, and I come from a very, very racist, bigoted, judgmental, righteous background in my family, and it was all from my father. And I sat at the edge of my bed one night, and I just accidentally, on purpose, said, "Oh my God, I need help." And within a few days, a person came into my life who is a channeling healer. And she channels spirit guides, much like Esther Hicks does, except much more profound and intimate and personal. And I began a 10-year journey unraveling the multiple layers, like an onion, of unworthiness, guilt, shame, abandonment, anger, you name it, the list is long, of things that I learned from my father that I believe to be true about myself. And throughout that entire process, there was a hell of a lot of tears, a lot of emotions, but I began to understand how healing truly occurs. And then in 2006, my spirit guides introduced themselves to me, and what they did was they told me that, you know, I have a healing gift, and I had no idea whatsoever that I was a healer of any kind. And when I look back on history, I realized that I'd done some things that, you know, I was kind of joking around with, where people's headaches went away. I didn't think anything of it. But they told me what my healing gift is, and they also told me to research energy. They said electromagnetic energy. So I said, okay, well, you know, I come from the field of telecommunications and electrician, so I kind of worked with it anyways, and I understood some of the theory behind it already. And as we move forward, they told me what my healing gift was, and then 4 women came to me in a period of a month who had severe migraine headaches, and each and every one of them I offered to do some healing work on them, and each and every one of them said yes. I honestly didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just put my hands on their shoulders and I put some pressure on their muscles, and each and every one of them within 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes actually, their headaches were completely gone. And it amazed me, and it shocked them, and it inspired me to research what I was actually doing. Like, what am I doing? Like, why is their headaches gone, and what am I doing? And and more importantly, I wanted to know the answers to how healing truly occurs. What is energy? What is conscious energy? Why do people have pain in their body? Why do they have mental health issues? Why do we have relationship issues? The list is long of the human condition, and eventually I started studying quantum physics, biophysics, epigenetics, and conscious energy research. And I've come up with a guideline on what I call the science of human potential, and I can point out to people now and educate people and help them heal through pointing out exactly how a thought wave energy field, how a thought translates into your physical reality. So I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be where I am right now, and that's kind of a bit of a Cole's Notes version of how I got to be where I am today.
Sort of healing yourself as well as others at the same time.
Exactly, and I continue to do that today.
So do you think that you've been on this path all along and just weren't aware of it, or was it just, did it happen at the right time?
Yeah, it happened at the right time, and there's a little bit of a joke here. My spirit guides like to make light of things that are sometimes really uncomfortable, and they pretended to hold a piece of paper in front of my eyes, and they said, "This is a contract you signed with us before you came into this life, and here's your name right at the bottom here, right here, and it's just an invisible piece of paper. And they said that you agreed that if you hadn't got it by the time a certain point had reached in your life, and this was when I was 38, they said you gave us permission to pull the pin on you. And that's in essence what happened, because one day I was the old Rocky, the ego-centric, sort of gratuitous monkey man, and the next day that's when they pulled the pin on me, and emotionally I fell into a basket case. So we have a relationship with our spirit guides to do the work that we came here to do, and that relationship was obviously very serious because of who I am and the work that I agreed to do. And like many people like myself who are here to help the earth change into a more loving place, my work was so important that I did sign up for this kind of ugly awakening. But as a result of it, I'm much more in tune and compassionate with people and their pain.
Now, you've built a life around the old Rocky, with, like you were saying, more ego-based. So now when you had that built life, let's say your friends and family, everything around you, and then you had the change, how did that affect that part of your life?
It was dramatic. In fact, it was almost tragic. If it weren't for the fact that I had so much strength. Because I literally became the polar opposite of who I was, or I was working on becoming the polar opposite of who I was, and because my belief in God and angels and spirit guides and everything shifted overnight, my family, I have 4 brothers, and my mom and my dad at that time. My dad's now passed. My mom's in her 80s. There was a separation there, and for almost 10 years, I tried to get my family to hear me about who I am now and why it's better, and each and every one of them freaked out because they thought I'd gone cultish, religious, whatever you want to call it. They were completely judgmental of it, and it was about 10 years ago that I made a choice that the family that I was born with was just that. It's a family that I was born with, and I don't owe them anything. And I let them go, and I decided to reach out to the world to attract to me a family that did love, honor, and respect me for who I am. So it was a very difficult thing, but today I do have some contact with one brother and some contact with my mother, but I just don't talk about what I do to them because it's pointless. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You were saying how, like you've written a contract, like you sort of chosen this path in your life before you came into the world. So do you think that you also chose the parents and family that you had?
I guarantee you that everyone does that. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because in order to come to this planet, you have to set up a plan for what you're going to accomplish here, and it usually involves, the polarity of the planet, which is, some fear-based thinking, some fear-based programming. If you come here and you just have like a perfect life, you're not really going to evolve, are you? So each and every person who comes into being born on this planet does choose their parents, and there's something that's involved with being a parent on this planet, and it's called lineage, and that's what the spirit guides call it. And the lineage is a lot of characteristics, a lot of fear-based beliefs, limitation, all these different things that is goes back ancestrally. If you check and you go back, from your father to your father's father to your father's father's father, you'll see some particular traits that seem to carry on. And so you agree to that lineage, but many of us, including yourself, I'm assuming, have come into this life to, quote unquote, break that lineage and start a new lineage for all of our kids and their kids and their kids in the future, based on love, a lot more love, learning how to love ourselves a lot more. And that is part of what they told me I'm here to do. So that's part of the work, and that, you know, that's something you can't just say to your family. You can't say, well, I'm here to break the lineage so that your kids and their kids are going to have a better life. Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is the work, and you keep it to yourself, and you know this, and if you're not going to be heard, then you just keep it to yourself, and you keep doing your work, and you keep sending love. And ultimately, love does temper judgment, and allows them to wake up and see you for who you really are. It's not a guarantee, but it's the only way to have people who are not really connected to you really join you and see you for who you really are, because they're in a state of sleep, if you want to call it. So that's how I feel about the whole family lineage thing. It's absolutely a guaranteed contract. It's something you agree to beforehand, and it has its purpose. And sometimes people come into lifetimes like I did, where it was very violent, and my mom and dad split up when I was 10, and I had to take care of all the children. I had to buy all the groceries, pay all the bills from age 10 on, and it was a hellish childhood. But you know, I do know that I agreed to it, and that I've chosen to forgive my father, and I've chosen to accept that life was here for a purpose. And the work that I do now reflects that, because I have a much more, I have a very deep compassion for people's pain.
Are you following the belief of life after death, obviously, but how about reincarnation then?
Well, here's an interesting thing on reincarnation, and my spirit guides told me this. They said that, because they're describing to me the human mind. They said the human mind operates in a linear fashion, and you think of time in a linear fashion. They said that's actually not what's really going on. They said there is reincarnation, but we're going to call it, no, we're not going to call it reincarnation, we're going to call it incarnation. And they said, what's happening? Because everything, all your past lives and future lives and everything are happening right now. If you can imagine, instead of a straight line ahead of you, there's these lines going out from the side of you. So everything's happening in the now, in this lifetime, and everything that I do in this lifetime affects every other lifetime. And what that means is that when you incarnate, you actually, incarnation rather than reincarnation is the fact that, in fact, our souls drop down into these multiple lifetimes, and you do have a contract on the number of lifetimes, let's say 100 lifetimes for a particular soul purpose. Because everything happens in the now, and time and space is an illusion in a linear fashion in our world, in reality, you're experiencing everything in the now. So, for example, we drop into every lifetime in the now, and you're living in the future now, and some people say, I don't want to be here on this planet anymore, I'm done with my work, and I laugh because I already know they're in a future life. So they can say that all they want, but the spirit guides laugh because you're going back anyways. One of the things that's really interesting about incarnation and the fact that everything happens now and all your lifetimes are all attached, I use the analogy of an accordion. When I work with people at the quantum DNA level, I'm accessing the accordion, if you will, in the DNA. So, for example, there are times when I have to, when I'm guided to access past lives for healing conditions. There was one woman I worked with who had severe panic attacks, for example, and she tried dozens of healers to heal it, and it never happened. We did one session together, and we did a trance state where she went into the feeling of this panic attack and the emotions of it, and she was transported back to a time around the Pilgrims. The really cool thing about that was I was able to see the same videotape as her as she was experiencing it. So we were watching the same videotape, so to speak, in our minds. To make a long story short, she was falsely accused of being a witch in that timeline because the cult leader was in love with her and wanted her for his wife, and she was in love with somebody else in the community, and so her sentence was she was buried to death. And the absolute trauma of that was still in her DNA, and every time she would go into a tunnel or an underground parking lot or anywhere like that, she began to panic and she couldn't breathe. You can imagine how horrible a death that is. So what we did was we helped her free herself from that incident by, I was guided to tell her to send a bubble of love to the crowd that was calling for her death, that she was a witch and you should die, and send a bubble of love to the crowd. And what had happened was the transition began and the crowd began to stop yelling for her death. And in fact, the man that she loved stepped forward at great risk to his life to say, this is not right, let her go, she's not a witch. And all of a sudden the rest of the crowd started agreeing, and the death was commuted to banishment from life. And as she was literally floating through the crowd and leaving the community forever, which is what she really wanted, something happened in her DNA that allowed her to free herself from this experience. And honestly, the next day she was driving out to UBC from Langley, and she had to go through the Dees Tunnel, and she normally would never do that. She would take an alternate route, but she was late, so she put up, but she said she held her breath and went into the tunnel, and she did not have a panic attack. She was so stunned by it that she came back home purposely through the tunnel again, and she had the same experience. And she called me and she said it was a miracle, and she said, I didn't have that experience. A few weeks later, she was in Montreal with her son, and she was on the tunnel there, the SkyTrain, or the whatever you call it, the underground train, and the same thing happened again. She had no panic attacks whatsoever. So that proved that what we did had an effect on her DNA, and the only reason it happened was because all her lives are connected. And when we freed her from that lifetime, you can imagine it's like a domino effect. It sort of dominoed forward into this lifetime, which is now dominoed forward into her future lifetimes, which means you're literally changing the history of what happened to you at that time, now, and in the future. So you can change the history of what happened to you and karmically release things that no longer serve you. Isn't that amazing?
It is. So are we meant to come across others to help us release these things, to change in cases like this?
Absolutely, because but there's always a choice, though. That's the thing. You can say no, or you can be unaware that somebody's come to help you. You may not hear them, you may not listen to them, but that's what spirit guides do. I have a little joke, and I tell people that my spirit guides are sitting up in the Starbucks in the sky, and they're sucking on their 380,000th latte, and spirit guides will be tripping along, and they'll see my spirit guides there, and they'll come over to the table and they'll sit down and they'll say, "Yo, dudes, can we have a latte with you?" "Sure, sit down." "My client needs your client's help." "Okay, my client is able to help your client, and my client needs healing, is always needing healing too, so let's work this out together." So I sit there and I move pieces around on the table. I'm pretending like I'm the Starbucks in the sky, and what they do is they work at trying to figure out the best way for us to meet and connect. And if we don't get it the first time around, they'll try again. So the people that do come into our lives are definitely guided to do so. There is a lot of help that happens in that respect. And in my case, I have people coming to me on a regular basis who say to me, "I feel like I was guided to you," or I feel like I was supposed to meet you. And I say, I just snicker to myself and I say, "Starbucks in the sky."
So now, do you think that then we all have this connection, like we all have a way of connecting with the spirit guide, but a lot of people just aren't listening, or they're avoiding it, kind of playing denial then?
In many ways they are, but they're not in denial, they're simply unaware of it. And many of us come into lifetimes where we're taught certain things. Most people have parents that say, children, for example, have the ability to see spirits. All children do. What parents do is they say, "Oh, stop that, that's nonsense, that doesn't exist." So you shut it down because that's what you're taught and that's what you believe. So every one of us has the ability to connect with spirit. It depends on what your life purpose is and how that unfolds. But just listening to this show today, I can assure you that everyone listening if you were to calm down and take that spinning wheel in your mind and just stop it and let it go and go deeply into your inner self, you will connect to them, and they will begin to share information with you in various forms. Some people hear the information, some people just experience what I call a knowing. But we're all able to connect to them. It's just whether we believe it or not. And ultimately, the work that I do works on core beliefs. If you are skeptical, or if you don't really believe you're good enough to connect to them, or you're not worthy of connecting to them, you won't. So it has to be a relationship where you release certain information about your beliefs, about angels, spirit guides, whatever you want to call them, and everyone is able to connect to them. And one exercise that I tell people to do is when you're sitting on your bed before you go to sleep at night, just close your eyes and breathe and relax, and just ask your spirit guides to touch you on your nose. And believe it or not, you'll start to feel this tingly sensation like electromagnetic energy, and they're tickling your nose, and it'll be after 30 seconds or so, it'll be so intense you'll want to scratch your nose because it's really itchy. And people do that, and I say, well, if that happens, then ask them to do your ear, then ask them to touch you on the leg, whatever, so that you get confirmation. So spirit guides and the other world where we come from are always right here. They're never far away, or they never walk away, but they're always present with everything that you're doing in your life. So therefore, it's an experience that you can have if you allow your belief systems to say yes to it. Say yes to that, and that's like a switch that turns on, allows your spirit guides to come in.
How do you explain a spirit guide then? Like, are they past humans that have lived, or what do you put that to?
We're all angelic beings when we go home. Every one of us. There's no such thing as a person on this planet. Even Adolf Hitler is an angelic being, believe it or not. He comes here to do certain work, and in his case, he was extremely efficient at it. But
yeah.
But the spirit guides are simply connected to soul purpose, and so they are teammates. They're like a baseball team. They're like your teammates that you request of them to be present in this lifetime, because here's what my spirit guides told me. They said, every time I evolve and I move forward, they said, we benefit as well as you benefit. So whatever I do to move forward, we all benefit together. So there is a very important purpose for spirit guides to have a vested interest in what you're doing on this life, and for them to follow the rules of the karmic agreement to fully ensure that whatever benefits come for the evolution of the soul are adhered to. And sometimes that means spirit guides have to do things that are not pleasant. For example, if you're not listening and you're not listening and you're not listening to a particular painful message that you're allowing your body to get worse and worse and worse shape. I've had people say to me that I've had the strangest last 3 months. I've been rear-ended like 3 times, and that's just weird. And I'll say to them, well, what part of your not listening don't you get? So I'll say to them, well, what do the car accidents have to do with my life? And I'll say, well, tell me what's going on in your life. And eventually we'll get down to something that they're absolutely refusing to deal with. For example, a relationship that is loveless, that's been loveless for years, maybe even abusive, and they're continuing to deteriorate, where their lifespan is being shifted and changed to a smaller and smaller amount. And the spirit guides say, you don't have to do that, and you'll have agreed to having this relationship with this person. The spirit guides will come in and say, you know what, you got to get out of this relationship, and you're not doing the work. So we're coming in and we're going to kind of, kick your butt a little bit, so to speak, to make you wake up so that you do slow down and listen to what's really going on and make decisions that empower you. and embrace love. So there are many different aspects to what spirit guides do, but they are all angelic beings, and you're an angelic being. You're no different than a spirit guides. You're exactly the same as them. You just happen to be in human form. Many of them have had human lives before. Some don't, some do. The ones that have had human lives are obviously more connected to what's going on with you as a human because they remember those experiences. So they are more in tune with what you're experiencing as a human being in this lifetime.
Now, I've noticed that you are a distance healer.
Yes.
So let's start out with that in the fact of what is the difference between distance healing and, let's say, local healing.
Well, the answer is there's no difference, but let me explain why. Conscious energy, let's use the scientific model. We'll use the Big Bang Theory. So we'll start off 15 billion years ago, and there was, I don't know if you're familiar with Greg Braden, but he explained that the computer models show that if you take out all of the empty space in the entire universe and you compact it into one piece of material, that material is about the size of a pea. So everything that we know in our entire universe started out as a little pea that exploded. Now, that pea is the energy of God, and it is consciousness. So that energy is spreading out and spreading out and spreading out and continuing to expand, and that energy is what connects everyone, because ultimately this illusion of separation, even between you and me here, you're in Seattle, I'm in Vancouver, or in Langley here, that is an illusion. This energy connects everything. Everything that is created on this planet, our cars, our homes, our bodies, our computers, everything is manifested through thought and through intention. So everything is connected. So when I talk about distance healing, I know that time and space are an illusion. So that conduit called consciousness, the empty space that we think is empty, is not empty. That's like a conduit to me, directly to you right now. And so when I work with you, I'm working within that conduit to connect to your core belief feelings, to your energy fields, to access where I need to go to help you release the information that is causing you to believe you're not worthy, you have fear, you have limited thinking, whatever it is. So distance healing works on the concept of direct connection through the conduit of conscious energy, and there really is no difference. For me, there's absolutely no difference between a person sitting in front of me and a person thousands of miles away. And when I do this work on distance healing, the results are exactly the same. So if I'm healing somebody's migraine headache or their body pain or their depression, the effectiveness of distance healing is exactly the same as if they were sitting right in front of me. It's just our minds perceptively think about this space as space, and the reality is that we are all connected. I mean, there's that old spiritual saying, we're all connected. Well, nobody really knew what that meant until we were able to prove that consciousness exists and that consciousness is the energy that connects us all, and this is a scientific fact now.
How does it work for you? Like when you're doing distance healing, out of the process and so if someone's feeling pain in any aspect, whether it's physical or mental, it works?
Absolutely, absolutely. And here's why. In what I call your quantum DNA, so let me tell you what quantum DNA means. Currently, in the scientific world, we have that big project out there called the Genome Project, where science is mapping proteins. That entire project constitutes a grand total of only 3% of your DNA. That's what science understands about DNA, about 3%. 3% of your DNA is linear and is functional from a scientific point of view. The other 97% of your DNA is the science calls it junk DNA. So they don't know what it's doing. They don't understand the language. They know it has a language, but they don't understand it. And the reason is because it's part of the universal divine you. There is a gentleman who channels an angel in California. His name is Lee Carroll. He channels an angel named Cryon. And Cryon has described this part of the DNA as what he called the 12 strands of the DNA. Many people have heard of the term Akashic record. The Akashic record is one of the 12 strands in the DNA, so it's all in your DNA. So when I'm working with people, I'm accessing what I call your hard drive, where all the information you believe to be true about you is stored in your Akashic records in your quantum DNA. So when I'm working on a person's pain, whether it's physical or mental or relationship-based, I don't focus on the pain. I focus on the unworthiness information that's stored in the quantum DNA. And now let me explain why I'm doing that. Everybody has a core beliefs that are steeped in unworthiness and fear and limitation. Being human is natural. Stanford University did a study on this, and they discovered the inner child has about 80% of its beliefs steeped in fear. And humans are walking around with that inner child in them all the time. The process involves accessing this information because this is how you create your reality. It's a very simple process to understand. Conscious energy is a neutral energy. It doesn't do anything until it's activated. I was given a definition of conscious energy, and I'll just say this for the listeners. Conscious energy is a neutrally participating energy wave which corresponds to intention and by which alters the state of electromagnetic particles. In other words, your entire world is created through intention and thought and beliefs, and that mixes and merges with your conscious energy field of which you are to create your reality. The only thing that changes that reality is the bias in the information that you're putting into it. In other words, is it positive or is it negative? So you don't change energy fields. When healers heal people, they try to change their energy. That's not possible because consciousness is a neutral energy field. It's the information in that energy field that creates your reality. Science calls it a wave function collapse. So you're having thousands of every second. You're having thousands of wave function collapses to perceive this physical reality. When I go in and I do the healing work, I'm focusing on the unworthiness information that comes from your story. In other words, what kind of language are you using to describe your reality now? And from that story, I'll be able to sort of work backwards into the information that is based in I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm stupid, I'm wrong, I'm never going to be smart enough to do this. I'm angry, I feel guilty, I feel shame. There's so many different things. And I work backwards from there into a belief, and then we eventually hit the inner child where a lot of these beliefs are, and we begin to release them the same way I was taught through my healing process of releasing the layers from the onion of unworthiness and guilt and abandonment and money issues. All these different things are directly tied into information in your DNA that needs to be shifted and changed, or as I would call it, I jokingly tell people that I'm Rocky, your antivirus program. And so I'm going in and I'm helping you remove files from your program that are not allowing your vessel to operate 100% efficiently because it's based in negative thought of self and others. When we change that information to self-love or to loving everything else, the vibration automatically rises, and that automatically goes out into the world through the law of attraction and changes your reality. It changes your body. It heals your body. The cells of the body react to that frequency because the cells are indeed just energy fields of frequency, and their job is to respond to the information you give it. So that's how healing occurs. It's a bit of a long-winded explanation, but I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah, and so when we get to that state, we're really influenced by other people then. Like when you walk into a room, you're going to work or you're on a rapid transit or whatever the case, and there's people that have just had a fight, you can feel the vibration, or if there's some negativity, like you go into your job and this person is all upset and they kind of pass it on. It kind of is very, how do you say, infectious.
That's absolutely true. And, one of the courses that I put together is a scientific version of workplace culture and how to shift and change that. Because once we understand that every negative thought and feeling and word we have has a direct impact on our environment as well as our body, we can begin to make choices that allow, your workplace or your relationship or whatever it is to shift and change based on the wisdom of knowing that when you choose to be angry at somebody, when you choose to be judgmental at somebody, when you choose to be angry at yourself or judge yourself, you're creating great harm. And when you think about the business world, if you think about the entire mindset of how business operates, looking at it from a global perspective, business completely operates on huge negative energy, or what I call male energy, which is force, which is winners and losers, which is, work your ass off and you're gonna be successful. And these are all illusions that are not real, but they cause great stress on the body. There is another way of creating success in business that does not involve stress, and I've put together a program to explain to people how that works. It takes some time to understand it, because it means you got to change your entire story, everything that you talk about, everything you believe to be true about success in business. You need to shift and change that, because you're absolutely right. Energy from people can affect you, and I use the term energy vampires. Will seek out those who are balanced and bring a lot of light and love, and literally start to suck the energy out of you if you allow it. Now here's where the rubber hits the road. You can block negative energy so it does not enter your field. Now in my video that I have on YouTube, I explain this in detail, and it's a very simple process. You can choose to operate in a we'll call it a bubble of love each and every moment of each and every day. You just have to intentionally set that and believe that it's possible. When you do, you are not affected by people's negative energy. In fact, you create a new reality all around that. So there are many ways to look at energy, but it can be complex. But I try to make things as simple as possible and just say, place a bubble around yourself and block the negative energy intentionally. It's kind of Star Trek-like in its thoughts, but it works, because I've had many clients use it and have workplace situations, relationship situations change as a result of it. So the power that you have in your thoughts and your beliefs create those realities, and so you're creating that reality. Why not just say yes to it and allow yourself to create what you want, not what you think you have to survive?
There's definite ways to avoid other people's influence on you, or be aware of it.
Yes, absolutely.
So now, I was also thinking about your life after death. Now, do you think it's possible to connect with past loved ones?
Oh, always. I mean, they don't leave. They're right there, just like everyone else. Just like every other being that exists in all the universes. I mean, Jesus, Archangel Michael, Archangel Metatron, Sananda, Buddha, Muhammad, whoever. They're all right here. You have access to all of them, including your loved ones. They are there, and they are watching you, because remember, this earth is a place where we come to play the game of human, and we're always being watched. And the loved ones that have crossed, once they're across, they understand what lineage is, and they're actually standing there with their pom-poms, jumping up and down every time you let go of the lineage that they weren't able to let go of, because it helps them in their evolution as well. So the loved ones are definitely there, and they're definitely cheering you on, and they're definitely doing all that they can to help you live out your life purpose and move forward.
Start with you. How do you sit on religion then, and religious beliefs?
Religion is a man-created process that is designed to generate limitation and fear in many ways. Most religions have certain aspects of spiritual truth to it, but they also have a lot of control and fear. Different religions across the planet have different levels of that. I mean, we think of the Dalai Lama, we think of a pretty free-based, loving religion. And then we think about, for example, the Christian faith, in the southern states, for example, that seems to be so righteous and so hateful towards, Muslims, so hateful towards different people. And so each and every religion has its purpose, though. In order for people to move ahead and evolve, it is the human condition to take on what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body and expand the pain body. How do you expand the pain body? You buy into and you believe in fear. And you preach the fear thinking that you're righteous. And that fear eventually, whether it's in this lifetime or another one, causes you to wake up and realize that the fear is out of balance and it's not appropriate. So like everything else on this planet, religion is one of many things. The military machine, is another one. The news media is another one. They're all based in extreme fear and violence and righteousness and judgment, all these things that cause people to eventually wake up and say, I don't believe in that anymore. So they all serve a purpose on this planet, but don't we all wish that it would all end and we could all live in harmony? And that's where we're headed. We are headed there. The spirit guides and all the ascended masters have said, we are headed to a better planet. We're just going through the transition time right now. As you know, we transition in December 21st, 2012 into what we call the New Earth. And there's a different energy on this planet now, and it is taking time for it to take hold and for the people of the planet to experience so much fear that they're starting to question everything. And this is a good thing. Fear eventually will make you question everything, and that's part of the spiritual journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you see everything as getting better, even though I guess right now it seems like it's in a lot of turmoil, certainly with ISIS and all that stuff going on. But you see the overall thing is going to get better. That's sort of your feeling?
Well, they've guaranteed it. They told me that they foresee the end of war on this planet in about 200 years.
Okay. Well, beyond this lifetime now.
But we signed up to do the hard work here. We're doing the transition work, and that's why you see the expansion of spirituality all throughout the world as people become less and less attuned to what they're programmed to believe or what they've been taught to believe, and they're starting to question everything. And they're starting to let go of all these judgments and fears and dogmas and everything else. The numbers are huge across the planet. There's millions and millions of people across the planet who are saying no to what they believed originally was the way it was. And this is a good thing. And eventually, when people understand the power of love, there will be we'll call it a tipping point, and in which masses of people are going to wake up and just question everything, question government, question everything. And there is a concerted effort by the Ascended Masters and certainly by different beings of light to continue to raise the vibration on this planet to a state where people have no choice but to wake up. You probably noticed, Alan, that a lot of people are in a deep sense of stress and fear and anxiety these days. A lot of people are.
Right.
And there's no fluke for that. What's happening is the planet is being flooded with love. Now, why would that cause anxiety? Because most people have no idea what love really is. And when love starts coming to them, they start to experience feelings in their body, and they're not used to feeling the feelings, especially men. And that's why you see such a large number of women in the spiritual movement, because this part of the healing process is feeling the feelings. But this wave of love is so profound now, the vibration is so high, that eventually we're all going to learn how to work with it and use it for the good of the planet, because that new wave of energy that's on the planet now will only respond to integrity, compassion, and love. Therefore, that's why you see so many institutions, banks, monetary systems, politicians, you name it, falling one after another, because they're out of alignment with the new energy of the planet, and they will fall and they will be caught. So there are lots of good things happening on this planet. You just have to pay attention to them.
Right. Now, you have how many spirit guides, and do you know who they are, or do you know anything about them?
Yes, I do. In fact, I know 3 of them. One is called Vo. The other is called Decia, who I started doing my work with way back in 2001. And then the other one is rather famous. His name is Seth. And Seth originally channeled through a woman named Jane Roberts in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and created a series of books called Seth Speaks, and books on the nature of reality. And he's a very interesting dude, because he's a guide, an angel that is very serious about transforming Earth into a better place, and he's kind of a kick-ass spirit guide, because he doesn't have time for folly, and he wants you to get on with the job. And he works with me at a very deep level, and I feel him around me all the time. And when I do get a chance to work with somebody who channels Seth, I'm very grateful for that. In fact, there's a man in the Seattle area right now who channels Seth, who I'm connected with, who I'd like to connect with a little bit more. But his presence is very powerful, and he has been teaching me the way of love versus judgment, love versus anger, love versus pettiness, love versus feeling sorry for myself, in many different ways. And so he's kind of like the leader of the group, but the other spirit guides are very much involved with it. They're all equal partners, and I have had the pleasure of speaking to each and every one of them through channel in the past.
Now, you've got a book that's going to be published. I mean, you self-published it, but it looks like you've stepped it up.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, the book came about as many of my experiences have taught me about how men are missing out on one really, really simple key principle of how to communicate with a woman that is so simple it doesn't make sense to men. The book is called Men, Sex, and Food. It's kind of a cheeky title. The subtitle is Why Hearing a Woman Can Lead to a Deeper Love. And what I discovered is that women would come to me with relationship issues, and about 95% of my clients for the last 10 years are women. So they're explaining to me what's going on in their relationship. One factor became very, very obvious, and that is that men do not know how to hear a woman or why hearing a woman is important. Now, men will sit there and listen to this right now and say, well, I hear her, and I'll say, no, you don't, and you don't understand what I'm talking about. I created and channeled a process in the book called the Chin and Hand Challenge. The Chin and Hand Challenge is basically you sit across from your partner, and as a man, you take your hand and you put your chin in your hand, and you do these actions. You zip the lip, and you go up to the forehead, and you turn off what I call the fix, correct, or make better, which is what men are trained to do. Men are trained and downloaded with information that in order to receive love from a woman, whenever she starts talking about anything, you stop her and you fix her, because you're the guy that fixes everything, and that's how you earn love from a woman. That's probably the number one thing that you do not do with a woman, because she absolutely does not need you to fix her. And this is what men don't understand. If you sat there and you just listened to her and you did not say a single thing, and you allowed her to have that energy in her that she needs to vent and download through her body and drain into the earth, when a woman is heard and you don't fix her and you don't say anything, and you just truly listen to her, she goes through what I call a venting process, and in the book I've got a diagram that describes this process. It's like a 1-hour clock. And so in the first 15 minutes of this clock, a woman starts to vent and her energy starts to drain from her body. And all you're doing is you're sitting there and listening. In the second 15-minute section, she begins to get epiphanies about what's going on in her world, and her language changes. In the third 15-minute section, she starts to really understand what's really going on because she's draining it and she's connecting to her own intuitive knowingness. And all this time, no matter whether it's 5 minutes or 55 minutes, you're just sitting there and you're just listening and you're relaxing. And you're not trying to figure, your brain is relaxed and you're not trying to figure out what she needs. And in the last section, she figures out exactly what she needs. She feels loved and supported in this process because you didn't fix her. You just sat there and listened to her, and something magical happens to a woman when she's fully heard and you don't stop and try to fix her or ignore her. The spirit guides told me that when a woman's fully heard, her heart center bursts open and love floods out. Now, when there's a true story in the book of a man who was arguing with his beloved, and they were arguing all the time, and he was even thinking about breaking up with her. And I told him about this chin in hand challenge, and he looked at me miffed. He could not understand for the life of him why sitting there and saying absolutely nothing to her would accomplish anything good, but he said, I'll give it a try. And when he went home, instead of arguing with her, he got her to sit down and say, I've got this process that a friend told me about, and just wanted to give it a try. Are you willing to give it a try? And she said yes. And so he gave her permission to vent all the information that she knew he had never heard. It cannot be malicious, it cannot be hurtful, it cannot be harmful. And so she did, and I warned him. I said, if you do this process and you don't fix her and you just let her be and let her let that energy drain out of her body, I said, you could wind up with some pretty yummy results. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's likely she's going to grab you by the hand, take you upstairs, and do all kinds of really naughty things to your body. He said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, it's not guaranteed, but it may happen. And he said, even better. He said, she's going to get up in the morning and she's going to make your favorite brekkie. How am I doing so far? He goes, well, that would be amazing. But he says, I don't understand it. But he said, I'll give it a try. And honest to God, Alan, that's exactly what happened. When she was fully heard, she grabbed him by the hand, she took him upstairs, performed hours of naughty things to his body. She was so happy to be heard. And in the morning, she got up and she said, can I make you your brekkie? And he started to laugh because he said, he said to her, Rocky said that this might be a possibility, and I'm just laughing right now. And she said to him, well, you owe him big time, don't you? And he said, yeah, I do. So that's what happened, and that's where the title Men, Sex, and Food came from. But here's the cruncher, Alan. I saw him 3 weeks later, and he told me that he'd done this exercise and that he'd had this wonderful experience. And then we talked a bit more, and then I said to him, how are things going now? And he sort of looked down with his head sort of almost ashamed, and he said, well, we're kind of arguing again. So I leaned out to him, and I put my right hand forward, and I drew a circle on him, and I said, here you've got fabulous sex and your favorite brekkie. I'm just going to leave that there. And I put out the other hand, and I drew a circle on it, and I said, arguing and feeling shitty. And I put both hands forward, and I said, why are you choosing arguing and feeling shitty? And he honestly and openly looked me in the eyes, and he said to me, it's not that easy. And he was 100% right, because my daughter wrote an article in which I borrowed a phrase from her, and she said that men are programmed to be emotionally unavailable. And so we're programmed to jump in and fix things right away, because if we have to feel things, we get frightened to death. And so in this process, I taught him something to bypass that. But in order for men to fully learn how to hear a woman, it is a process and it takes time, but the benefits are huge. And they create something that I call into-me-see, or intimacy. And when you learn how effective that is at helping your partner feel completely engaged in your relationship, the benefits are absolutely huge. Every man wants to be loved by his partner. Every man wants all the benefits of being in a relationship with a woman. There's some things that we just need to do to shift and change in order for that to be accomplished. And in this particular case, this one is so easy because it involves no effort whatsoever. Just imagine you're sitting there and you're relaxing and you're just listening to her. How easy can that be? But for most men, it's a really difficult challenge to do that. So that's why I wrote the book. And yes, the book is being published and it's going to be out on bookstores everywhere. And I hope that everybody gets a copy of it because it is a game changer in relationships.
Tell everybody about how they can get a hold of you and what other things you offer. You do some healing and everything, so let everybody know how to get in touch.
Well, the easiest way is a good old-fashioned email, which is stressfreeme99@gmail.com. You can also reach me at area code 604-510-0721. I do a free 30-minute consultation on distance healing and local healing for anybody to come and begin the process of understanding how I work with them. And I charge $500 for a 5-session package in which I virtually guarantee that if you show up with authenticity and ready to do the work, any physical pain or mental pain that you're going through, any relationship pain that you're going through, I guarantee we will make significant progress on it and you'll be well on your way to freedom.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you taking the time and letting the listeners know exactly what you do and distance healing and everything.
Thank you so much. It's a real treat to sit here and share this with you. I really enjoy it, and I hope I get a chance to come back and talk some more.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you, Alan.
Show is over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night. This has been a production of the Z Talk Radio Network.